Welcome back to Jersey Matters. I'm Larry Menti. Recently, Governor Murphy declaring a foreclosure crisis in the state, signed 8 bills that he hopes will alleviate the problem. Here to talk about that is Deborah Weiss. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Listing specialist at Redfin, and Gina Sapnar, manager of the foreclosure division at Redfin. So there's 8 bills that are signed. Give us the highlights. What did the 8 bills do?
The basic overview is, 1, they're offering counseling for people in foreclosure. So there's a $155 fee that the lender will pay out of every foreclosure that will go into a mediation and a fund to keep the foreclosure properties up to date in New Jersey. There is a bill to make sure that all the servicers in New Jersey are licensed with the state and are up to par with the state requirements. The governor also signed a bill to increase the foreclosure sale from 120 days to 150 days in New Jersey. And there's also a bill that the lender has to send out a letter to the occupant and has to complete the foreclosure within 180 days of that letter. If they don't, then the foreclosure process starts all over again. They have to send another letter out, and the 180 days starts from there.
So it sounds like when you take all these bills in totality, it's actually extending the foreclosure process. That can't be good news for lenders, can it?
No, but I guess the whole idea is with the counseling is to actually, if we utilize the counseling properly, we can educate the sellers and also work with the lenders to maybe come up with a quicker resolution as what's the best option for sellers. Sellers don't always know what their options are.
What are the options?
There's sell your home. If you have equity, then you sell your home, and get out. If there's no equity, you sell the home in what's called a short sale. And that is, when the bank takes less than it's agreed, and it's agreed upon, and it's less impact on your credit. The other option is actual mediation, loan modification. Perhaps the people can stay in the home and remodify their loan. They have to go through and requalify. The problem with that is a lot of people, if they're in this situation where they haven't paid, they're not going to qualify for another mortgage because of, they're not working, or, their income levels, or their debt ratio, or the house doesn't appraise properly. So loan modifications don't always work. And a lot of times people aren't reinvesting into their house, keeping, with the upgrades. So that's not always the best solution either. It's like a little patch at the time. Or the last option, which really is an option, is the foreclosure itself, because that in itself does give sellers cash back incentives to move. So there are 4 different options. So this counseling is what's really necessary so people can make right decisions on their home and make these decisions quickly to get people out of the foreclosure status, either in any one of those options.
One thing I didn't say at the top was that New Jersey leads the country in foreclosures. Even though they're down from last year, still lead the country in foreclosures. And it was interesting you said foreclosure as an option, but that's the worst option, isn't it?
Foreclosure is the end all. It's the last option. The bank actually takes the house back. What happens is when a foreclosure is in process, a lot of times the occupant just shuts down because they're overwhelmed and they don't have any kind of direction of where to go. There's many times I go to a property after it's foreclosed upon, the occupant is still in the property, and the bank is willing to still work with the occupant at that point to give them money to vacate the property so they can actually take the house back and get it ready to put on the market. And that's the toughest part of the job is working with the occupant to be able to get them an alternative housing.
A couple interesting things about the bills. First, it calls attention to the problem, which I think is good for everybody. But it also, the one thing it puts money into is the counseling that you were talking about before, because my feeling is the people that are facing foreclosure are trying to avoid the problem. And it's probably the worst thing you can do.
Correct.
You need to have a conversation and be in contact with the lender to try to figure this out, because as you pointed out, there are ways to figure this out. And do you believe that most foreclosures can be avoided if there is a conversation?
Absolutely. Yes, because of one of those 3 options. But again, if you can't short sale, which you should be able to short sell your home, and you can't modify, yeah, the foreclosure is the very last option.
It does sound like that's just not happening enough. It sounds like people are putting it off and putting it off and putting it off and not having that conversation and not even realizing that that's the conversation that could be had. Is that what you're finding?
Absolutely, and that's what I'm saying. That's where the counseling is going to be key in here, is getting people to make those decisions. Look, it's a little bit human nature. You find yourself in a situation and you just don't want to deal with it, so you don't deal with it. But we have to somehow counsel, homeowners. They need to make this the right decision because it's going to affect them long term, and the lenders need to get this decision made, and legislation get these decisions made faster and quicker, and get people on with their lives and the money back into the hands of the lender, and get the houses, back repaired. A lot of the foreclosed homes, they are in disrepair by the time they actually get to us, to list the properties. So Fannie Mae has developed a program, with Redfin, that we're renovating all the homes, and they have this new program that we're making sure that they get sold to an end buyer and not just investors. So there's a very large program out there for what happens to foreclosed homes afterwards that are actually going to improve the economy.
So how many times when you go to foreclose a house have people been avoiding you until that moment?
Oh, I would say 30% of the time the homes are occupied and they don't want to answer the door. We post a notice. Sometimes they call. We go back several times.
Not realizing that there were other options. So they don't even know there's other options until it's too late.
Correct. I have a property now where it's been 3 months. The bank's willing to offer them a considerable amount of money to move out of the house, and they will not respond to any of the notices. So they're going to get evicted and then, leave with nothing, when we could have worked hand in hand to try and find them alternate housing and compensate them.
And are the banks and the lenders doing everything they can to establish that communications?
I don't have
Early
the
on?
answer to that. I would hope so. And I would hope that mediation process that the governor is talking about, that's what that should entail.
Because there's a breakdown somewhere.
That's what the mediation is, that's what the bill proposes.
I think the breakdown is the occupants are just scared. They don't know where they're going to go. They don't know the next step. They're not educated on the process, and they think if they just ignore it, it'll just drag out longer, and I guess think maybe it'll go away. But in turn, it turns into an eviction.
So maybe this will be a good thing. I mean, even though
Yeah.
it extends the time, which I'm sure lenders are not happy about, it does create this counseling and awareness. So maybe people will act before it gets to foreclosure.
Right.
And we can avert this crisis. Not avert it, but at least
Well,
get out
maybe
of it.
they'll take advantage of the relocation assistance quicker, vacate the properties, and we can get them back on the market for neighborhood stabilization.
Wonderful. Thank you both for coming in.
Thank
Thanks
you
for
so
coming
much for
back.
having us. Thank you.
Deborah Weiss, listing specialist at Redfin, and Gina Sapnar, manager of the foreclosure division at Redfin. When we come back, it's back. The Quick Check New Jersey Festival of Ballooning, when Jersey Matters continues.